Why I'm not boycotting Fender guitars. Hey everybody, Jayce Allan here. I gotta say, the entire hysteria over Fender is interesting to say the least. For the past 4 years, I've been making videos about how good budget guitars are, and how I think brands like Firefly guitars are every bit as good as Fender USA. I also talk about Chinese knockoff brands like Donner, Acklot, Tostar, etc., and how these guitars are great for the money. I talk about how brands like Heritage make a better Les Paul than Gibson, and how Epiphone is just as good as Gibson. And you know what I get in the comments? Pushback. I get people calling me a Chinese shill, a communist, that I support slave child labor, that I'm un-American, that I should be buying Fender and Gibson because they support American workers and because of their legacy, and that all other companies are stealing Fender and Gibson's intellectual property. Well, I gotta say, it's interesting how people's opinions of Fender guitars have changed over the last several months. Now in the comments, I read how Fender guitars are garbage. They have terrible quality control, they're too expensive, and on and on. The same people that just a year ago were telling me that there's no possible way that a Firefly Stratocaster can be as good as a USA-made Fender Strat, and that when I buy Chinese guitars, I'm threatening the jobs and livelihood of hardworking Americans, are now saying they'll never buy a Fender again, and that Fender guitars are dead to them, and that Fender's quality has been terrible in recent years. So what is happening here? Humans are herd animals. We tend to do what the rest of the herd does over fear of standing out, thus attracting predators. When some knucklehead like me comes along and says Fender guitars aren't any better than budget-friendly Chinese brands, I threaten the tribal balance. I threaten the very existence of the herd. People simply don't want to hear it. Then when a few well-respected YouTube influencers start saying, yeah, Fender isn't so good anymore, and I'm not buying them because of these lawsuits, and you shouldn't either, buy these brands instead, now suddenly you have people thinking, you know, maybe Fender isn't such a great brand after all. And before you know it, the collective opinion of the herd is that Fender guitars are bad. And then they talk about boycotting the brand, and even some have suggested burning your Fender guitars, or at the very least, selling them all. Well, once again, I disagree with the herd. And here's why I won't be boycotting Fender guitars. The reason? I was never a loyal Fender customer to begin with. I treat a guitar like an artist treats a pencil or a paintbrush. It's a tool for making art, for making music. As long as it functions as it should and is built to an acceptable level of quality, then you can use it to make music. It doesn't have to be constructed from organically grown old-growth swamp ash that was blessed by magical wood sprites. In fact, an electric guitar doesn't need to be made out of wood at all. Creative builders have been making guitars out of toilet seats and shovels and Legos and even a working shotgun. But for some reason, guitar players have this opinion that the only good guitar is some fancy wood, name brand guitar, and of course, it has to be made in the USA. Anything else is just a guitar-shaped object. Well, all those guitar-shaped objects have been allowing people to make music on a budget for several decades now. In the late 60s and early 70s, budget guitars were admittedly pretty bad. That's because the foreign companies making them didn't really know what they were doing. But now they've had around 50 years to improve their guitar building skills. Add to that, CNC manufacturing and imported guitars are rivaling even the big name brands. I have nothing against Fender or Gibson. I've been saying that all along, but I'm not brand loyal. I don't elevate these brands to some cult-like status like many people do. People treat these brands as if they can do no wrong, that their guitars are somehow magical, and everything else pales in terms of quality and, of course, the all-important inspiration. When I started reviewing guitars about 4 years ago, I was convinced that I needed to buy Fender USA. I needed that quality in order to sound good, that somehow it was the guitar itself and not the player that determined how good you sound. And as soon as I got my hands on a few USA-made Fender Stratocasters, I was surprised that they didn't sound any different than my $200 and $300 Fireflies and Donners. That's because Fender and Gibson have spent decades convincing people that they are synonymous with quality and superior tone, and their followers have repeated those claims and amplified them. Naturally, people getting into guitar want to be accepted by their guitar playing peers, and so they bend to the peer pressure and jump on the Fender or Gibson bandwagons. But there are great guitars to be found by all kinds of brands, and many of those guitars can be had for less than $300. Spend as much as $500 or $600 and you have a guitar that is, yes, just as good as any made in USA brand. That said, I've bought plenty of Fender guitars and even a few Gibsons over the years, but I rarely, if ever, buy brand new guitars. So my money was never directly going to support Fender or Gibson in the first place. There are so many guitars out there, manufacturers could probably stop making them and we'd still never run out. Used guitars can also be as good as new. Many people will buy a guitar, play it a few times, return it to the case and never pick it up again. I've bought guitars from Goodwill that looked brand new. That means someone bought a very expensive guitar, didn't play it, then simply donated it. So when I want a name brand guitar, I find an excellent or very good condition used guitar on Reverb or similar used marketplaces. Here's another reason I think boycotting Fender is probably not the best idea. If you believed that Fender was the best guitar brand and you bought lots of Fender guitars over the years before these cease and desist letters went out, then the only thing that has changed about those guitars is that some corporate CEO got together with a bunch of lawyers and said, let's send out angry letters to all of our competitors telling them to stop making Stratocasters. If you thought the quality and tone of a Fender Strat was better than any other guitar out there 6 months ago, then nothing has really changed since then. You are merely buying into the hype and jumping on the let's shame Fender bandwagon. Now, if you look at guitar brands objectively and reasonably, and you believed all along that Fender has occasionally made bad design and marketing decisions, and that as a large corporation they behave as many large corporations do, then you don't need to boycott them because you were never a Fender supporter in the first place. If the way Fender treated the G&L brand and its employees when they unceremoniously killed the company didn't convince you that Fender, as a company, isn't such an ethical and moral pillar of the guitar community, then I don't know what to tell you. Another thing is boycotts don't only affect the people at the top of a company like Fender. They affect just regular people trying to make a living doing something they enjoy. This is precisely why I'm able to separate my feelings about the Chinese Communist Party from the people in China building and selling Chinese guitar brands. They too are just people trying to make a living. I just find that all this hatred over Fender to be rather performative and a little hypocritical. I think people somehow still view Fender as this little guitar factory in Fullerton, California, lovingly turning out handcrafted guitars by experienced luthiers and craftspeople, rather than a factory with machines turning out parts and, in assembly line fashion, people putting those parts together to form a guitar. We tend to romanticize the Fender brand, and we look at some of these companies with rose-colored glasses. But now it seems people are removing those glasses to see the companies for what they are: a corporation in business to make money. What do you think? Are you boycotting Fender? What would they need to do as a company to earn back your business? Let me know in the comments. And as usual, thanks for watching. We'll see you again next time.